Okay, so I've got these materials set up on these desks, and now I want to get some light fixtures into that area. So I'm going to place the lights in Revit first, mainly to get the actual fixtures. I'll show you how they work as lights for the rendering as well, but I'm going to do most of the rendering in 3ds Max. So in my ceiling plan for this level, I've got a level 1 ceiling plan.
So we got to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't got ceilings, then you also need to. Oh, well, then you can use those different lights, but I'm going to do ceiling lights to begin with. But yeah, I'll put some other kinds of lights in as well. And so you can see there, it's hard for me to tell even where those desks are because it's a ceiling plan. I'm going to go to the level 1 floor plan and just show you that they're in this area here. So to show them in my ceiling plan, there are a few different ways, but I'm just going to use a simple method and draw some reference planes over the edges or. You can, but underlay will sometimes show you something different. So I'll just show you. So if I go to underlay there, okay, so here we are. So I can try putting, even though this is level 1, I can try putting level 1 again as the underlay there, and yeah, so that's actually worked. But yeah, you just got to watch out because the underlay is, you can see you've only got the levels there, so you don't get to choose floor plans. But yeah, so that's actually fine here, but otherwise, yeah, you can just draw reference planes. And so now I can see clearly where those desks are in my ceiling plan, and I can go and place some lights. So if you, well, you just use place component, and if you go to load family and look in the main library, in lighting fixtures, you may just see a couple of lights. So remember, this is the Australian content, and you know, there isn't much there. But if you go back and then into the International Metric Library, and then lighting fixtures, you'll see you know, quite a bit more. And this one here, so I'm just going to copy that while I'm at it. Now I've got a custom library here, which has more again. So in lighting there, I've got more still, and then in lighting fixtures, I have more again, and you can see in these subfolders. So these are all just from the standard libraries that come with the program, and I've got a copy of these on the P drive in Revit Resources. You'll see in the, so I'm just opening that up. So no, just in Revit Resources, and then you'll see in there more Revit Library in the lighting fixtures folder there. There we are. Yep, it's all there. So all of those lights you'll find on the P drive, except for this one, which I'm going to give you today. So you may have seen there's another one which I based this on. So I'm just looking for it now. I'll go back into here, maybe. There it is. Okay, so this one's used quite a lot, you'll find, for downlight. So downlight recessed can. And so I'm just going to open that and show you how it works. So I'll place it maybe just so I've got a few within this little pod area. So I just want to do sort of 3 of them. Okay, so I'm going to look at that back in the perspective view. And you can see there are my lights, so they're coming up fairly clearly. Now, if I go to render that, you'll see it should show you know, reasonably. So in the scheme there, I'm just going to set it to interior artificial only. And then the quality, I'm going to improve that to low, but everything else I'll leave on default. So now when I render...
So then it's saying you need permission to...
Yeah, it's your size. Yeah, yeah, it's just too big. Yeah. It's big. It's big. You haven't got enough room on your hard drive.
I do have.
Oh, I do. 150 gig.
Yeah, it's really. I think I have like 120 please.
I'll have a look, but I mean, you can definitely copy it.
Say like you need permission to perform this action.
So which one are you coming from? Oh, okay. So the revenue source is obviously massive.
That's what I think.
Yeah, so for this one,
Oh, okay, so
yeah,
take this one.
that's that one.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, so that's almost rendered, and I'll just adjust the exposure so you can see a little more clearly what's happening. Okay, so it's doing a reasonable job of lighting that area. The colour balance could do with some work, but otherwise it's okay. But you can see up here the lights, they're okay. They're a little bit dim, and at some angles they almost look black. You can't even tell there's light coming out of them. And that's because it's relying on the light hitting the inside of that fixture, and they don't have glass at the bottom that glows. And so I've made a new one that has, it looks basically the same, but I've added some glowing glass to it, and I think it just renders better. So I'll replace that with mine, and you'll see the difference. So I'll just do that in my ceiling plan actually. So back to here. All right, so I'm just going to select those lights, and then back to edit type and load. And then in my custom library here, I've got there we are. So this one, downlight, recess can glow, I've called it. Okay, so then looking back at the perspective again. Okay, so I'll just render that again, and so just to show you the original before I do the new one. I'll just pause the video for this one. Okay, so there we are. So that's now rendered. You can see how much more, I don't know, real, or just, they look like lights to me. The others look like sort of dim things that might have had a bit of light coming out of them, who knows. But that, yeah, there's no doubt about it, it's a light. And so, you know, something just to consider, it's probably not technically correct. So in real life, lights maybe do have varying brightnesses, and looking at some of these, they do. But, you know, people don't expect to see that. They expect to see a nice bright light if something's an emitter, a light fixture. Right, so I'll just show you some other kinds of lights though.
So how did you make them work like that?
Oh, okay, so I had to go in and edit the family, and I'll go into that in a moment. I will give you that family though. And so I'm just going to go now to a 3D view, so you can see my ceilings and the fact that they're maybe not typical. So these ceilings here, I just made using model in place. But as long as you set ceilings as the category, then you can place any ceiling hosted lights into them. Yep, it's fine. And so other than that, you've got a few basic kinds of lights. So I'll go back to the ceiling plan and back to component, load family, and again to...
Model in place ceilings category, how do you do that?
So just like you'd make any in place family,
Yeah.
model in place, and it'll ask you for the category first thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I see.
So yeah. So when you're loading your lights, you'll see you basically can break them down by the hosting, and so so I'm just going to go to my different library, and okay. So you've got all of these ceiling hosted lights. And most of them will say something about being ceiling hosted. The downlights, you can usually assume they're ceiling hosted, even if it doesn't say that they are. The pendant lights as well are ceiling hosted. Okay, so maybe I'll just put one or two of those in just so you can see how they come up.
So when you model the ceiling, actually, like model in place, you have to choose a ceiling that you can model in place, right? So the Revit will understand that this is a ceiling cover.
Exactly, exactly. It's just a category, but then it'll let the lights be hosted by that. So yeah, I know. That's why I'm going to change this one. This one.
Like a chicks, like
So yeah, you can see the. No, that's enough of that one. But there you can see the lights hosted. Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I've got to be very judicious about which angles I choose. But
Is it possible, for example, I know that you have the ceiling light and it says hosting in the ceiling.
Yeah.
But is it possible to
dehost it.
dehost it?
Yeah, not really.
Try that.
Yeah, you can if you have to go and change the family. So you go into the family, edit it, but not in the project. And so there are lights though that aren't hosted. So they've got all those ceiling hosted lights, and it's really useful having the geometry that you need for the light fixture. That's the main reason I use these things. But there are times when you just want a light. So I'm sure most of you know this one, but I'll just make sure you've all seen it. So the studio light, and I've just got to pause the video and get some water. But that's right. So the just continue the studio lights, the one I wanted to show you, and so in the lighting folder with most of your lights, you should always be able to find that one. And so in studio light, there we are. And I probably have another one here.
And that's the one you edited.
Just called Studio Light. No, this isn't. This is just a default light that comes with the program, and so I haven't changed this at all. I might just place that down here and just quickly show you how that looks on its own. Because it's one, I suppose a lot of you would have used this one because you don't need to worry about hosting or anything like that. It just works on its own. So there we are in the room. You can see there we've got a floating light, and I'm just going to pan and bring that up so I can see all of the walls. And maybe I'll just walk back a little bit. Oops, too far. Okay, so just coming forward, there we are, too far again. Okay, so it's getting a bit jerky. Normally this is fairly smooth, I've just got a few programs open. And too far back again, so... Oh, okay, so really hard to control. So I'm just giving it a moment. I have to get back a little bit. There we go. Please stay. There we are. Okay, so just widen out the field of view a bit, and now I've just panned. That's fine. Zoom to fit when that happens is a good way of getting out of trouble if you've zoomed off the screen. And there we are. So now I'll just render that quickly so you can see the studio lights look a bit ordinary, to say the least. So they're good if you just need to add some extra light to a certain area. I think especially when they're subtle, they can be pretty effective. But when they're really bright, it's obvious that it's not coming from a particular light source. You just have this floating glow, and that's never a good look. Okay, so yeah, just watch out for them. You don't want to overuse them, and people do. Yeah, yeah. Okay, but you know, if you do need to add light in a certain area, they can be handy because they do just float on their own.
You can put them on the side, right, and kind of have interact like that.
That's right. That's right. If you get them away from the surfaces and make them not so bright, then they can be pretty effective. So, so here I'll just change the height there. So the height at the moment is you know, very high. I'll bring that down, and that's too low. So 150. I'm meant to do 1500.
1600, wasn't it?
And okay, so then also I'll reduce the brightness.
You can't select it. No?
You reduce the what?
In properties, you have to do it there. But then the brightness as well, you can do here. So just in, if you missed what I've been doing, edit type to change all of these things.
Yeah.
And so it's got initial intensity because
Yeah.
technically that's correct. Don't worry about what initial means though. Intensity is all you need to read there. So you've got intensity and color.
Yeah.
Initial intensity, initial color, but yeah, intensity and color. And so you can work in watts if you like, but you know, it's not the best lighting unit. At first, that's probably fine. So if you want to make that twice as bright, it would be 200 watts. Half as bright would be 50 watts. Don't worry about the efficiency. And so that's all I'm going to change. And I'll come back to the color in a moment. But for now, just hit OK. And rendering again. It may not be obvious at all that there's a floating light now because it might not glow on any of the surfaces. So as long as you can keep it clear of things, it can work pretty well. If you want the glow, you're often better off making a proper light fixture, and I'll show you in 3ds Max. You will get much more control anyway. So there we are. So that's a lot more balanced. And so you can use studio lights as long as you just think about how you use them. And then maybe just to quickly show you some of the others. In the floor plan now, I'll put in some floor lights. So you've got...
So 4000 as a color luminescence is good. It's kind of a cool color.
that's quite warm, 4000. Oh, it's slightly warmish actually. 4000 is close to neutral,
Yeah.
but on the warm side.
Okay.
So you do it floor light.
Yep. So
So when you do floor light, you go to the actual floor as well.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, in your floor plan, and then it will just pick up your floor. So you've got M floor lamps, and there are up lights in one of my folders here. I'm just trying to find.
That's why my Revit wasn't taken because I don't have this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Here we are. Floor lights. Okay. So that one and yeah, this one's pretty good. So yeah, these are all in that library. Yep, I can see it right there. Okay, so I'll just put some of these around the room here, and close to walls can often be good.
So you
For
put
these
it
lights.
from the ceiling, right? Or from the
No, this is a floor plan now.
floor plan?
Yep. So back into my camera view, and now we can see those lights. So again, I'll just quickly render that. And find the button. There we go, render.
Nice.
Okay, so floor lights work fairly well. Wall lights, basically the same idea, and they they will pick up your walls and just attach to them. So fairly straightforward, and it's always good to test out your lights like that. Just put a few in, get them working, and see what they do by rendering before you go crazy and put in hundreds of lights. And I've seen people do that, put in literally hundreds and hundreds of lights before doing any rendering,
And it's like
and then finding out that none of the lights work, and spending hours trying to fiddle around. And the renders take forever when you do that. You probably saw that render took a little while, but still fairly quick because I've only got a few in the scene. And even so though, it'll tell me how many lights there are because lights make such an impact on your render time. So here, 8 lights. If you see 30 or 40 there, you know you're in for a fairly long render, no matter what, even with a simple scene.
Yeah, when you use studio lights, does it render, or even those lights, does it render on that region only, or it goes with all the other lights?
Yeah, it will calculate them all a little bit. It won't necessarily do all the calculations, but yeah, it does factor them in. So the best thing to do if you've got a really big project with lots and lots of lights is group them, and then you've got this artificial lights panel for that. So that's actually what it's for. That artificial lights is to manage your groups of lights. And so here you just group them into regions. So you might have living area lights, bed, sleeping area or something, and then you can have them on or off in groups, and that will really speed up your render time hugely. Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, definitely with yours, you've got two obvious separate zones, and that's definitely an obvious
to
group.
untick it, right, when you render.
Yeah, that's
You need
right.
to turn it off.
That's right. Exactly. That's it.
How do you know which light belongs to what group? Like, that's something.
Oh yeah, so you see how each light here has a number.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you'll see that back in the properties in Revit. You can see that number. So here, this light
Best way
has its own number.
Start actually placing light, you group it straight away.
Yeah, I think you do the group at the beginning.
You can. You can also do them afterwards. So here, I'll just do that. I'll show you how to put these into a group. So I'll go into here, and so I'll make a new group now called Office 1 or something. Okay, and so I know these floor lights all go into that group because they're the only floor lights. But if I didn't know which light was which, I can always go and look at the numbers. So in properties, I can see before that light was number 6, so I can come back into here and see this light is that one. Right? And then you can just go move to group and then put it in the one you want. So yep. So now I can just put all of these in, and there we are. So I can have that office turned off.
And that's in the render box.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. And remember, it's set to the view. So in this view, I can have just those lights turned off, and then in another perspective, I can have different sets of lights turned on or off. And then every time I go into those views, they'll render with those groups of lights.
So when you select artificial light, whatever, like interior, and you click on it, so the office light will come there. Right?
So oh yes, so I can turn these off now.
Okay, so it will be.
Yeah, and so now it will render with just the studio light, and the lights from the room are behind, but no floor lights.
So the lighting fixtures and all this comes up on my computer at home, like this just comes.
Yeah, as long as you've got the libraries. Yeah. Yeah. So when you install it, it should install the libraries.
Put this on your hard drive actually. This whole.
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, you can just copy it off
Yeah,
of here.
because when you unplug it, the record is not gonna be. It's not there.
So actually, there's one interesting thing to see here before I go into 3ds Max. The lights from the floor aren't rendering. They're not lighting anything, but they're still glowing. So that's a bit of a trick because they're using a material to make that glowing effect, but there's no light coming from the light source. So just to compare that, I'll turn the light fixtures on again, or turn that group on again, and then now you'll see it'll have light coming up the wall.
Because it's shown actually on the floor.
What were they called, those?
Yeah. So they were. Yeah. So there we are. So now they were turned off, but they still show. And so now though, you can see the big difference when it actually has light coming from those, and not just that fake glow. Okay, so that's what lighting's all about, really, getting that effect, not just the fake look of a light. So, oh yeah, so there's one last thing though before I go into 3ds Max, we've got to look at Kelvin. So, just going back into any of these lights now, back into edit type. Right, so you've got the brightness, and I'm sure you've worked with lighting units, you've done your lighting subjects, so you know about lumens and lux and all the different ways of specifying your lighting intensity. Then you've got the other main characteristic of light, and that is the colour, or the Kelvin
So you can make it a red one.
temperature. Yeah. So do you know, you've worked with Kelvin values before, hopefully? Yeah. Well, look, if you have trouble remembering them, this can help because it goes from, well, it's not in order actually, but you know the low values are warm, right? So 2000 is fairly low, and I should be able to see if we can find one that's that low. Halogen or something might be incandescent, maybe 2.5 or something, maybe.
Do they have LED?
Do they? No. LED is a bit of a funny one because it varies. But let's see what quartz is. quartz might be, yeah, that's kind of neutral actually. Sodiums, what about the low pressure? Sodium. Should be fairly low. There we go, that's a really low one. Okay, so you can see how crazy the image goes, orange almost. And you can see the filter, well, it's not really the filter, it's the raw colour, the raw temperature. So going up to, say, a halide, it'll be, I'd say, I guess 3,000, maybe 4? Yeah, 4. And so that's almost neutral, but they probably should have a neutral here. Well, let's say, yeah, so 5,000 is what I use as neutral, even though some people might say that's on the cool side. Okay, so that's, I still think that's actually a bit warm, but that's, when you look it up, that's neutral, 5,000. 6,500 is definitely for me getting on the cool side. So there we are, you can see that there. And the best way is when you look at it as a in a filter really on a finished image, and see what it does to all of these different colours.
Can you control the angle of the light? Like, if the light flashing really wide.
Oh, of course, yeah. But we'll do that in Max, not in Revit. Yeah, but you can, yeah. Much better in 3ds Max, so. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you look at these Kelvin values, and I'm sure you played around in Photoshop with that quite a bit using the photo filters and all of those things. So make sure you have a good idea about why you're using Kelvin as opposed to using a filter. Because that's fundamental to an understanding of light, understanding light temperatures. So anyhow, I'm not going to change it though. I'm going to leave it on. I will make it cooler to 2800. That's just too warm. So I'll make it. Let's go for neutral. Okay, so 5,000. Okay, now you've got the filters as well. So if you need to do an unusual color, you can, and that's why you use filters, because you can't do everything with Kelvin. But yeah, it's really important that you can set your neutral and other white balance ranges, both in the light and in exposure. So when this finishes, I'll show you the white point. I'm sure you've all done it, but if you don't know what I mean when I say doing it in post or in exposure, it's the white point that you adjust for the Kelvin. Okay, so you can see already how much less orange, I suppose, less warm it looks, and that's good. It was too warm before. It's probably a bit too cool because it's just a boring scene, and so a bit of warmth doesn't hurt in images like this. So going into exposure now, I could take the white point to the right, so you can see it's 6,500, which is quite high, and so making it warmer. And it's the opposite here. I know it's even back to front. Higher values are going to make the image warmer because it's a filter. You're doing the inverse. Yeah. So anyhow, that's going to make it warm. If I go all the way, just so you can see, that's going to be really orange. Going the other way will be really blue, and that's a bit too blue. Let's go maybe just slightly less than that. And I don't know about you, but this is something I spend hours and hours on, and something I think people really let themselves down with the work that they've submitted to me, because I've seen some really good, or some vendors that have always had a lot of work put into them, great modelling, pretty good designs. Sometimes even the materials and lighting are fairly well worked out, but then the final image is let down because of simple things like not getting the colour balance right. And it's a real mistake for beginners because it's such a simple thing to fix. It takes a couple of minutes to adjust it and make a huge improvement to your fundamental image. So I can maybe even just quickly show you the things I was doing with other students just before I get into Max. And if it's on here, I will show it to you. There he is. So I should have here the original unadjusted I'm hoping. Now, I probably have deleted the unadjusted ones. This is all Max here, and this is a student who did this, and he did some really good work, but when he gave me these images originally, They were as dark and orange as anything. They just looked terrible, to be honest. And it's a great design. I really love the design, and I like the presentation. But yeah, it was these ones, and it's just a shame I didn't keep the originals. I'll dig them out. I've got them on the main TAFE network here, and so I definitely want to show those to you because it looks really vibrant here. But that's because I did spend quite a long time getting the colour balance right, and it's just such an important thing. And you know, when you see it, it's obvious. And my partner, she's not a designer; she's in human resources, but she loves graphics and working with images, and so she spends most of her time fiddling with photos, adjusting just that, getting the colour balance right, and it's a huge thing. And when you see the difference in the corrected photos compared to the originals that she's taken, it's amazing.
You've actually worked on his project, like on his pictures.
Yeah, to improve them. Yep, in exposure. Yep. Yeah, I've worked on everyone's when I get them for open day. It's not, and so it's the two things. It's the exposure that people can just do little things to fix, and then also the camera angles. And it's not changing your design in any way really, but presenting it in a much better way. Yeah. And that's really a big trick really. That's it, exactly. Yeah. I think the designs. I mean, for me, I know you're probably copying a lot of criticism of your designs, but for me, the big area where people can improve is presenting what they've already got, because the designs I think have a lot of good ideas and good work put into them, but then it's just not being shown.
Yeah. Can you ask a question about that self-illumination material? Is that a personal question?
So, yep, sure, just about as possible. Okay, so we've got the lighting fairly well under control in Max. In Revit. Got an idea how it's working and what the options are. Now I want to go into 3ds Max. So as always, I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to do one extra thing. So, have you noticed this new option in Revit since 2012? I think it was there, yeah, definitely 2012, it's been there the whole time, but 2011, I don't think you had this option. Save, orientation, and lock view. Okay, so it's a really useful option, but you may not have noticed it. The reason I'm going to use it here is because you might have seen when I came into this file, that view wasn't there. And that does happen quite a bit in Revit. These 3D views, sometimes it doesn't save the orientation. So I'll go back to the previous angle, and it's a bug in the program. It shouldn't happen, but it does. So what you can do to avoid that is lock the view. That option isn't there because of the bug. It's actually there for something else. It's because largely for views like this, so I noticed a lot of you have been doing those exploded isometrics, right? And they're a great thing to do, right, where you've got them stacked on top of each other. But with those views, it's really important that the angle doesn't change. So you might set an angle like this, and then that's going to be the angle on the sheet. So it's really important that you don't accidentally come back in and orbit in the view, because that'll change the way it looks on the sheet as well. So that's why you've got the option to lock it. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, really handy, but really easy one to miss as well. Okay, so I've got my view locked, and now I'm going to again save the file, just because it can crash when you're doing this, and then you'll lose the work that you've done all the setup to link. So back to export FBX, and here it's going to my Revit files folder. I'll go to my Max import folder, and there's my old FBX file. Now you can see there it's got 3D View 4 as the name. So I'm going to click on that file so I can override it rather than leaving the file name that I had, because I've changed this view.
Export FBX for 3D Max.
Yeah, and if you've already exported an FBX file, you can override it, even if it's got a different name. You can still overwrite that, and just by clicking on the one you've already created, you can overwrite it. And here you can see it's asking me, do I want to overwrite? Yes. Okay, so now in Max, I've got the file open already that I linked to previously. So all I need to do now is go back to the References submenu, File Link Manager, and then on the Files tab, reload. Now, it's really important here that you tick these two options if you've done anything with materials in your max scene. Otherwise, you'll lose it all.
Can you go back to the slide?
So all I did was click reload. So
when you open it, it counts this one.
yeah, so I'll do it from the beginning. So now my mouse is just going a bit crazy. Why is it doing that? Someone hacking me? No? There we go. Okay, so I'll do that from the beginning again. So main menu, references, file link manager, and then on the files tab, so not the files button, but the files tab, you need to click reload, and then down the bottom, tick the two options for materials, only if you've made material changes in your Max file.
Is that like material from Revit to Max? Or?
Yeah, so in here, I've done some work to these materials in 3ds Max.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to bring the materials back from Revit again, because I'll lose all the work I've done in 3ds Max.
Yeah.
So that's what these options do.
Okay.
And so that's fine. I'm just going to click OK now, and I'll get the changes.
So you worked on 3D Max first, brought it into Revit,
Yeah.
and now you're bringing it back to 3D Max.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's the whole point. So it's linked, and I can keep working in Revit, and then all the changes keep coming through. Okay, now in the camera view there, you can see it's a little bit different. So I'm going to switch to my new camera by right-clicking. So it's a bit hard to see the view label, but it's the second one. In each of the viewports, you've got 3 labels. So the plus, then the view orientation, then the view type or the graphics is the way it's organised. So there, I've got the same 3 things. It's just hard to see because I'm in shaded mode. F3 will turn that off, and maybe that'll be clearer.
Like Revit, wireframe.
Exactly. Exactly, and so you change it so often, you've got that toggle. So F3 just toggles back and forwards, and so when I right-click on perspective, I can go to cameras, and then 3D view 7, and that is the view you can see that I had in Revit. So, oh yeah, okay, so there, cameras, when you right-click, yep, and then you get the cameras from Revit. So notice you can only bring in 1 camera at a time from Revit. But that's not a problem because cameras in 3ds Max are just better. So I don't mind that. So my camera, I should be able to see it. There it is. So you can start with that camera and then modify it and copy that to make new cameras. Or you can just make your own. And I might just quickly show you that. So making a camera in Max isn't very hard. On the Create panel, you've got the Cameras panel and then the option for Target and Free. So I'm going to use Target, and I'm going to click and drag in the top viewport in a similar area to where that other camera is. So I'm going to click and drag there, and you can see that's giving me a camera with a target that shows the field of view, that cone. Now, then I'm just going to right-click in the, I should go to the bottom left viewport, so I'm right-clicking there. And then C on the keyboard is the shortcut to set a camera. Now, I could have always just right-clicked on the camera or the view label and chosen the camera from there anyway. But shortcuts are good. And so now I'm going to use truck. Now, it's the pan symbol, but it is called truck, because notice pan is a different thing with cameras. So it's using camera terminology, not other things. So there I've got pan and orbit, but truck is actually under the walk tool. So truck, like I said, it's the hand, which is the pan symbol, but you've just got to get used to the terminology used with cameras. That's called trucking. So the reason I'm using that is because trucking, you'll see if I switch to a different viewport so you can see it from the side. When I truck in this viewport here, it's going to lift the camera and the target together. Right, so And remember before what I was saying about keeping your views straight? Right, so that's going to do that for me. If I just lift the camera up, then I'm going to go and lift the target up, and they might be at different angles. Okay, so here, panning or trucking, I'm going to hit F3 to go to wireframe, and you can see there I've got a pretty similar view to what I had. So that's getting there now. There's a couple of things though that aren't showing up. So you can see here that the lighting is different. So I'm going to right click where it's got realistic, the last label there, and then under lighting and shadows, you've got the option to illuminate with scene lights. And you can see that's now giving me a much better lighting in that viewport. It still could be better though. So I'm going to fix a couple of the materials. And this is all to do with lighting. It might seem like it's something else, but it's actually to do with lighting. So now, what's this? Oh, now the sun there. See how it's way off in space? If that happens, there's a little trick you can use to bring it back. Go to the motion tab, and then you'll see the orbital scale. Now, it's not going to let me adjust it. That's great. That's great. So, well, that's what you should need to adjust when you select that. Let's sort of see if it's even turned on. It looks like it's turned off, actually. Ah, yeah, it is turned off. That's why it's so large. Now, it's because of the render settings. And so I'll leave that turned off for now. That's fine. We'll come back and get it from Revit again in a moment. So I just forgot that I'd set it up for an outdoor render, aside from an interior render. So anyhow, what I really want to show you is that if I hit F3 now, looking at it from the outside, the windows aren't see-through. So I want to get light coming into this interior. So I'm going to, in the material editor, use the eyedropper. So if you don't get this one, if you don't get the compact editor, you need to go to the modes menu, remember, and bring up compact material editor. Then I'm just going to choose a slot that isn't being used. So do you remember the ones with the triangles in the corner are the active materials? Okay, so see how you've got these little, in the corners of these three materials, the little triangles. Okay, so they tell you that they're active, they're being used. So I'm not going to use any of those slots. I'm going to go to one of the others, so any of the others, and then I'm going to use the eyedropper and then pick on my glass. Okay, so that's giving me the window material, which you can see down here has two parts. It's actually got a frame material and a glass material. Okay, so all you have to do to fix the glass is click on the glazed material, and then you can change it. So here, this is the glazed material. Now I can change it from Autodesk glazing to good old Arc & Design. So this is the one you will get used to it before, or in no time. Arc & Design is the one I'm going to recommend you use for everything. And so here, Arc & Design is great. It's got its own templates, and you can choose glass thin geometry from there. And what do you know? We've got see-through glass in the scene, which will help you hugely. So, okay, so this one's shaded. I'm going to set this one to shaded for the time being as well, because you can see it's still very bright, and there's another reason for that. So I'll go to shaded, just so it is not using the light for now. And now, back in this scene, I'm going to set the rendering back to interior sun artificial. Okay, and believe it or not, that will have an effect. So I'm going to save the scene again, save the file, export FBX, export over the old one. So I'm going to choose it, click save, yes to over. Oh, and sorry, there is one other thing. The wall. So did you notice how here we can't see that wall? Well, why not? I kind of don't like don't mind the shelves like that actually. So it's one of those things where sometimes you make a mistake and realise it can look pretty good, but I do want the wall. So in my, well, you can see in my 3D view, I've hidden it. And that's a bit of a cheat you can use in Revit sometimes, but now I want it back. So I'm going to unhide in view elements, and then back to normal. Okay, and so now I'm going to export that yet again. Again, over my old file.
Why isn't that there's just a separate review?
Yeah, and so that's why. So it uses the view settings. It always brings in your whole 3D model, but with the settings for that view. So notice how the sun was turned off because in my render settings I turned it off. The wall was hidden again because in this view I'd hidden the wall. So and that way you can choose what comes into Max and what doesn't. So now back in Max, I'm just going to back in References, File Link Manager, Reload, and then leave all of these options turned on. So that's going to bring in my daylight system again. Oh, now, so one little tip though, before I do this, just watch out. It really will help if you've got the top viewport active when you do this. Yeah, the top or perspective, but not the front or another view. It's just because of a little bug that can pop up if you import into a different view. So now I'll just go and do that again, reload, and you'll see a few changes. Mainly the wall, but also my sun should be on now. And then we can do some lights. Okay, so there we are. So you can see the wall there has come back. And my sun, notice how it's much more manageable because it's not floating off in space. And also it's on. And you can tell because if it's black, if the little bit that looks like light coming out of the dome is black, that means it's turned off. And if it's not, you can see there it's colourful, that means it's on. Okay, and you can tell in properties as well, it's got active ticked. And so now I can finally show you in the viewport, if I turn that to realistic, I should get light coming in through the windows. And that's a very useful thing. Now, it's coming in, but notice it's very, very bright. What do you think might be the final thing now? Think about if it's too bright overall. Exactly. So with interiors, you need the exposure under control because you have, in general, lower light levels. Your eyes are used to lower light levels because you're indoors. So here, that's 8 already. That's quite low. Let's just see what it looks like in the preview. Is that the...
For some reason, it's not so. No.
Oh, that's looking much better. That's really good.
Yeah, I changed the lighting.
Yeah. No, really getting there. I mean, look, you might want to think about the view angle. But I mean, look, the top looks good. It's just the bottom left, sort of the way it...
This one?
Yeah, just the way it goes to the edge.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because the top, that looks really good with that sort of triangular bit in the centre. That's good, yeah. That sort of frames the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then, yeah.
I even managed the sunset at the back.
You're going to?
Yeah, no, I did manage because I put studio lights behind the.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. You can get moonlight sometimes, and it looks really good with a studio light or with a spotlight. Yeah, so this has finally finished the preview, and so now I'm going to tone the exposure value up, and you can see in the viewport now, it's much clearer. Okay, so I'll go. Oh, that's actually not too bad. Maybe just down one more. All right, so in the viewport settings as well. I'm just going to check that I've got, yep, illuminate with scene lights, that's fine. And then this one as well, I'll set to realistic. And then again, so there the shadows are working much better. Now in this one, yeah, it's got some unusual graphics going on there. This one, that's really what should be happening now. So I'm wondering why this one on the right, it's still not updating properly. I mean, we can see something, but it's just not as good as it should be. So maybe if I go to wireframe and then back, it'll wake it up. It might just be a hard view for it to redraw. So like, it's good when it works, and it is, I think, something you will need to do at some stage. This one's the one I'm going to work in anyway, so I'll just use that. So here I'm going to set that to wireframe, and this one as well, because when you've got several shaded views, it really will start to overwhelm your hardware. But anyhow, I've got the camera view working, and that's the one I want. So now to start rendering with those lights, you can see I've got the camera there in the top viewport selected. Now I want to start bringing this into the into that area with the office, and at the moment it's got a target, which makes it harder to move. So I'm going to set that to free camera in properties, and you'll see now that I can just use move, and moving the light around, I don't need to worry about the target. It'll just keep the target at the angle that it was. So I'll bring that forward and just try and get the basic view that I want. Now you can see here that the wall's in the way again. Now I might, just to get this working, bring it slightly further forward. Oh yeah, I'm going to, yeah. And so this is what you do with target cameras. You can just move the target, but with free cameras, the only way to change the angle of the view is to rotate, and that essentially is the same as moving your target. Okay, but the good thing about cameras in Max as opposed to Revit is that you have the exposure values. Oh, sorry, the exposure values, the field of view values. So just changing to a front view so you can see this. All right, so that camera there, I might just lift it, I think. Yeah, because we want to see the lights. So yeah, so that's not too bad at that height, but I still can't see enough in the view. I want to see a wider field of view. So you can see there it's got a 24mm lens. If I go down to 20mm, that's going to widen the field of view, and I can now see the lights. And then going further to say 15, that's going to give me a really stretched out field of view. So you just got to make sure that you work with those preset values rather than adjusting in an uneven way. So, oh yeah, the shadows are great. And then, so just remember in Revit though, you can adjust them by eye, but it can be uneven, and that's totally unrealistic. And so you just got to get used to doing it in Max, where yeah, and it's using a lens, so it's always consistent and it's physically accurate. So it's not obvious maybe until you do quite a lot of it that this is the way your eyes see, and it actually makes for much better views in general working with this sort of camera methodology. So I've got the view. I might just do a quick render so you can see how that's going to render without any setup. Okay, I might just pause the video there. Okay, so look, obviously there's still a lot of setup to go for this rendering, but it's coming along. I can see things, the balance of the lighting is starting to be close to what I'd want. And so that's always important, just to get a a baseline to work from. And now I want to go and really look at these artificial lights. So we've had a bit of a look at the daylights already anyway, the sun in other words. And so now, again, as always, don't forget to save your files. I'll just do that now. So I'm going to do a save as actually and use the plus to give it a new name. If you don't know this trick, that's a really good one in Max. Next to the save button, the little plus there just increments your file name by 1. So it's always good to increment your files every so often so you can keep earlier versions. So now I'm going to turn my sun off. Okay, so just by selecting it in the properties, so yeah, that comes from Revit. All right, so in Revit you set the location for Sydney, and then when it comes into here, it uses that. And so now though, I don't want the sun or the sky, I just want my lights. And so I'm going to render again now, so you can see what it'll look like without the sun. Not a lot.
So the light will come as it's set in Revit.
Yeah, this is from Revit. So again, I suppose what I'm trying to show you here is that a lot of the things you're using in Revit already have actually come from 3ds Max.
Because you pick that two boxes. Two boxes when you click on the reference.
Oh,
Materials.
The materials, when you said you take these, make sure you take these two boxes.
yeah. It's all. I mean, all of the materials are from Max as well, but you'll see even the lights. Well, I'm not even going to wait for this one to render. You can see it's doing something. There's light there, so we know light has come from Revit. It's just not bright enough. So we'll close that. We'll cancel the render, and you'll see there's a couple of other things I've got to change. So under rendering, you've got environment, and you can see there it's got this MR physical sky. So again, that's come from Revit. So I'm going to turn that off, use map, and render again. So what you'll see now is that I'll still see something, but I won't see those bright areas through the windows where I can see the sky. So I do have light, it's not all black. So it's really important that you understand that. The light is there, it must be, otherwise we wouldn't see a thing. Okay, so I won't wait for that to finish. You can see it's doing something. The major issue though with the brightness there is again the exposure. So going back to rendering and then exposure control, you can see here it's on 12, which is kind of in between what you'd have for an interior daylit scene and an exterior. So for an interior daylight scene, it'd be about 10, which is a little bit bright just because I had a lot of sunlight. With an interior artificially lit scene, in other words indoor nighttime, it'd be much lower. It could be down to 2, but that may be too low for a scene with this many lights, so it might need to be 3 or 4. Okay, so you've got these values in Revit as well. You would have seen when you go to adjust exposure, you've got the exposure value up the top, from bright to dark. And so at first you would have just been adjusting the slider and seeing what happens, but as you use it more you realise those numbers mean something, and they do come from photography. So if you, and so people, I mean, have any of you used cameras with film in them? You have, yeah. So, it's a very good thing to do. If you haven't, try it and maybe, do a bit of research on it. You'll see that the more you understand that, the more you'll understand design, graphics, art in general, that they're all closely related. Anyhow, you can see here I've got the exposure value up to 6. That's maybe a little high, so down to 5, or no, 4's too low, so 5 is probably about right. Okay, so I'm going to render again now, and you'll see it's going to be much, much brighter. Now, again, this is just with the lights as they come in from Revit, so I haven't done anything with them yet. But what I want to do now is really get in and do some things with these lights, because it's not very interesting to just have these things you can't adjust. Okay, I might just pause that while it's rendering. Okay, so that's going to take quite a while to render. I won't wait for that, so I'm just going to cancel it. But you can see it's starting to come together. Now, what I want to do now, though, is go in and really adjust those lights. So, to see the lights that I've got, I'm going to go to the Tools menu, and then you'll see there's a light lister there. Now, where is it again? Here we are, light lister. Okay, so that'll show you all the lights in your scene. So it's a really handy tool just to see every light object, because sometimes it takes a while to find them all, whereas this will just show them all to you. Okay, and so I've got there my sun, and the sky comes up as a separate light. So it might not be obvious to you, but the sky is a really important light source. So the blue sky that you see every day is one of the most important light sources that...
Usually applies around blue, or
so
that's sky?
Sky, yeah.
What type of... Does it come in different kind of...
Yeah, it gives you a range of colours. So yeah, the clouds, and then red close to the ground and everything, yeah. So, but you can see they're both switched off, so that's fine. And then I've got my floor lights, I'm going to switch them off too. And the studio light, and the pendant light. So I just have those 3 down lights that I've got in the area where I want to work for now. Alright, so I'm going to go back now and render again with just them. So that's a lot clearer. You can see it's only lit in that area. It's rendering much faster, you can hopefully tell. And this is on moderate quality. I can make it go faster even if I take the quality down a bit more. Okay, but that's, you know, rendering fairly quickly. It's these areas with the chairs that are going to slow down because they've got that stupid mesh material. Okay, but anyhow, I can see that now I've got just those lights. Now, what I'm going to do is go in and just select one of them. So the lights, you see they've got their own icons, and so I can tell just by looking that those are the lights there. Now, it'll take a while for you to maybe get used to the icons, so a really good trick when you're working with just one kind of object is to choose that filter. So you'll see on the main toolbar, you've got the filters. It's the first drop-down list there. So I'm going to set that just to lights, and now, no matter where I click, all I can select is lights. Right, so there, doesn't matter if I click near another object, as long as I click near a light, that's all it selects. So you can see now when I select the light, it comes up as a free light in the modify panel, and it's got a bunch of settings. So it's already set to be a spotlight, and we've got, you know, ray trace shadows and so on. Now, these other lights, they're the same, but if I adjust one, they're not all going to change. I want them all to change as a group, so I'm going to select one of them, and they're just holding down Shift. I'm going to click and drag, and then put my new light over the top of the old one. Then I'm going to set the option to instance, so that's really important. That means they're linked. So I'm going to click again in that area to hopefully get the old light. Now, you can tell the difference. You can see over here, one of them is bold and the other one's not. The bold one is the instance. The one that's not bold is the original. So I'm going to delete that, and now I've just got my new instance. Right, so we're going to do the same over here with the other light. Okay, and again, instance, and now I'll just try clicking in the same area to get the light that isn't an instance. There we go, you can see that's not bold, so I can delete that. Right, so now I've got 3 lights all linked together, and we can have a good look at the settings. Alright, so one of the reasons that it is hard to tell what the cone is doing is because it is quite wide. So looking at the light there, you can see it's going down a long way and it's got a fairly spread out spotlight cone or field of beam field. So yeah, to begin with, I'll maybe turn on the target. So you can see up the top there, you've got the on-off option, and then next to that you've got targeted. That way I can select, using a window, my targets, just there. You can see I've made a window around all the light targets, and I'm going to drag them up so that they're closer to the ground. Now, that's actually gone and done something really strange. It's pointing them up. Don't worry about that. It's because of the settings here. So I'm just going to go through that. When you bring imported lights in from Revit, they have a lot of things set up that you need to sometimes clear. So that's fine. We'll turn off the shadows option there. Now the field of view is okay. Now what's going on there? So I'm going to have to just go right through all the settings here. Okay, I think I might just remake this light because yeah, it's a bit unpredictable when you bring lights in that have been made by Revit. You've really got to go through and check all the settings. Maybe if I just set this to something else, disk, and then we'll set the template again, and that might at least set it. Otherwise, no, I'll just go and remake that. Okay, so you can see the problem there. It's pointing up, and I don't want that. I'll just see if I turn the target on again, if it'll let me bring that down now. Yeah, really strange. Okay, so just watch out for that. You can usually adjust the lights that you've brought in from Revit because they are really just 3ds Max lights. But when really strange things like that start happening, it probably is easier just to make a new light, and it's good for you to see that anyway. So I'll just show you. If I go onto the Create panel there, and then Lights, you've got Target and Free. Now, you have to be on the photometric panel, and probably the easiest one to make it first will be Free. So I'm just going to click on Free Light, and then click over the lights that I already have. Now, in the front viewport, I'll right click, and then you'll see I've got a light sitting on the ground there, and I'm just going to move that up into the scene, or into the area where the lights I already have are. So that's at about the same location. Now I'm going to, in Properties, set that to be the same as the light that I already have. So the lights that are already there, I'll need to also turn those off. So back under Tools, Light Lister, I'm going to turn off, here we are, the downlight, and this one here, photometric, is the one that I want left on. So that's fine. And there we are, so they've gone black. You can see those lights are switched off. And now I'm going to choose from the templates here in the light properties, halogen spot. I'm going to turn on the target. So back up the top, you've got targeted as an option, which will then let you drag the target down. And a good trick there when you're working with the target, you can right click and then select light to go back to the light that belongs to that target. So now I'm going to turn the target off so that it just is easier to work with the light. Now, before I do anything more with the light, I'll render just so you can see how a basic light like this would work, starting from scratch on its own, with nothing much else. There we are. So you can see it's lighting something, not very much, but we've got something visible there. Right now, the main setting you probably want to look at with spotlights isn't the brightness. At first, you need to make sure you've got the right cone. So with free lights, with omnidirectional lights, they light evenly in all directions. Spotlights are targeted, so you need to adjust that cone so that it has an area large enough for it to light something. And we'll just in which one am I rendering it? So in that viewport, I'll just go to shaded, and you can see the area of the hotspot getting bigger and smaller. And then you've got the fall off, and that's the area where it fades to nothing. So by having a soft edge, or by having a difference between those two angles, you can get a soft edge to your light. Okay, so I'll render again now. Notice I haven't changed the intensity at all. All I've done is adjust the angle of the beam. So, oops, render. Okay, so suddenly we've got light again, clearly illuminating that area. Okay, so I'll just cancel that. I'm going to go to the other viewport and render it, just so you can get a better view of the whole light. It's rendering my perspective again. Why is it doing that? Oops. Oh, it's still active. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay, so you can see there the area being illuminated. Okay, so it might not be obvious, but the shadows, well, it definitely wouldn't be obvious until it finishes the final gather. Here we go. So once it starts doing the full render, you'll see the shadows are hard-edged. So hopefully when it does the next couple of buckets, you'll see some shadows in there, and they will be hard-edged. Well, there you are. Actually, you can see the oh no, I thought that was a shadow. It's not. There we are. Okay, so you can see this one there. So that's really clear. So you've got those hard-edged shadows, and that's because we've just got the one light source, and it's coming from a point of light in a cone shape, and using these things called ray trace shadows, which basically project very accurate rays. That can be a good thing, but it's also pretty unrealistic. So to make it more realistic and just a nicer light generally, you can change emit from shape from point to any of these either shapes or 3D volumes. I'm just going to use a disc. That's pretty close to the shape it would be emitted from anyway if it's a downlight. And then the radius there, I might make that a bit smaller. So here the radius is 130. I'm just going to make it the same size as my downlight. And you can see in the top viewport, it will show me that. And so there you can see. You've even got the option to make it visible. So rather than having that glowing disc of glass that I had to set up in Revit, you can just turn this option on, and in 3ds Max, the lights will show. So now I'm going to so I just adjust my fall off field. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So it's nice and smooth at the edge. And what was the other thing? So the shadows. Oh yeah, the brightness. Okay, so we haven't looked at that at all yet. But in 3ds Max, notice again you've got the same options for color. So if you wonder where Revit gets them from, it gets them all from 3ds Max. They're exactly the same as the selection we have in Revit. But you can also set a Kelvin value directly in 3ds Max. So here you can just put your own Kelvin value in and your own filter color, and then below you've got the same options as you have in Revit for intensity, except for wattage. So you can't use watts, but you can use lumens or candelas. If you want to type them in here, just turn the option down below off for the percentage, and then you can just type in directly whatever you use. Then you just type in a percentage. So that's 100% of 3,000.
Oh yeah.
And so if you want, 1,500, you make it 50. So I don't mind working in percentages, but also direct units are good as well. And so if you don't know candelas, if you don't know any of these units, candelas aren't a bad one because they're meant to be equal to one candle. So in theory, this light is as bright as 3,000 candles, in theory. So now I'll just duplicate that light. So I've got that light set up the way I want it to be, and so then using Shift and then Move, I can duplicate that light, again making sure it's on instance, and that way I can easily adjust any of these lights and they'll all change. As we get the position right, and one more. Alright, so let's see if the lights... Okay, so this viewport's going really weird. Yeah, I'll have to look at the settings there. So anyhow, that doesn't matter, let's go back to shaded for that one. And so rendering now. It's going to give you much softer shadows. But you can see, hopefully, much more controlled than the lighting in Revit. In Revit, it was everywhere and not really targeted very well, and also the colour would have been much more difficult to control because you've got lights interacting with each other and you don't know, what's doing what. But when you can target the lights and manage them like this, then you control the final output, and you're not, hitting render and hoping to get a good product. You are controlling the output, which is something that, it takes you a lot of experience to realise what you're doing. I mean, up until now, essentially what you have been doing is probably, hitting and hoping that you get the output that you're after. But you're not knowing how you get there until, no, it takes years really to get to that point.
Do you have any old tutorials on Revit from last year?
For
Just general stuff.
just general set up a project in Revit. Yeah, well, I put the videos for the last project with you in this class in CAD 3 last year there. They're in the week 3 folder, I think, maybe the week 4 folder.
Where are the links to?
Oh no, so maybe the week 2 folder. Yeah, week 2. So, oh yeah, so I'll put a shortcut to that, to the resource files for you.
Okay, so it's a little longer.
Yeah, yeah.
Start with 5.
Yeah, so I'll just get a...
And what was that? Just doing the whole building or something?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, oh, here we go, that's the one. And well, I mean, you can just find it in there if you go to that CAD 3ds Max tutorials, and then it's this folder here has all of the resources. But if you like, I'll put a shortcut to that in.
Yeah, because then they're together.
Yeah,
So then when we open one, we know that I have to open the other.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
No,
No, that's it. Now I should pause this video as well, so you don't have to listen to me doing. Yeah, that's it, and
Yeah.
that's it, and they're the ones, and they all swapped around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's changed because that's I think because they've got the African